Welcome to Rob on Holiday's Disneyland Paris In Depth. In this series, we're going to take you behind the scenes and in great detail at some of the iconic rides and attractions at this park. Today we're looking at Walt Disney's version of the haunted house. In this case, in Disneyland Paris, it's the Phantom Manor. Welcome, foolish mortals, to the Phantom Manor episode. The Phantom Manor is Paris's version of the Walt Disney Imagineering classic attraction, the Haunted Mansion. Phantom Manor is Disney's version of the haunted house. You get inside a people mover that takes you around the inside of the house and out through a graveyard section and then an old haunted western town section. Seen lots of spooky things on the way and it's got a great atmosphere through it. So let's go and take a ride. Plans for a haunted house appeared on the very first sketches made of Disneyland in California. However, it would take 14 years for these plans to come to fruition. Initial plans call for a walk-through haunted house filled with optical illusions. Walt insisted that the mansion look well kept from the outside so as not to spoil the beauty of his park, but no one could decide exactly what should go on the inside. When plans for the original haunted mansion in Disneyland, California were made and work started, they eventually halted in 1964 when Walt Disney's crew began to work on the World's Fair in New York. But actually, out of the World's Fair came an idea for the Haunted Mansion. So the World's Fair featured an Omnimover, which was a ride that moved people around a track. And the Doom Buggies that you'll see in the Phantom Manor and the original Haunted Mansion they actually rotate so that the guests can see what's going on. For example, when you go in the seance section, they constantly rotate, so you're always facing the middle of the room. And that technology came out of the rides at the World's Fair. After the fair, Imagineer Bob Gurr used the People Mover technology created for Ford's Magic Skyway to develop the Omnimover system. These vehicles not only move forward in a continuous loop, but they could also be turned 360 degrees, allowing the Imagineers to control the view experienced by the guests at all times throughout the attraction. And so, the Doom Buggy was born. However, the two lead Imagineers on the project were still debating who or what should inhabit the mansion. Mark Davis thought that the mansion should be a comical take on a haunted house, whereas Claude Coates thought the attraction should have a dark tone. So, who won? Well, fans of the Haunted Mansion will know that the answer is that both men got their way. The first half of the attraction is spooky, while the second half is more whimsical. And mansion fans will know that the Haunted Mansion has perhaps the most iconic pre-show of any Disney attraction, the Stretching Room. The Stretching Room was initially designed as a workaround to transport guests from the mansion to a bigger show building beyond the Disneyland berm, but has come to be one of the most iconic and beloved parts of the attraction across the world. Before we close the Haunted Mansion chapter of the story, there are two more people who we should mention. Yale Gracie, who designed the special effects for the mansion, including the Pepper's ghost effects in the ballroom scene, and Ex Atencio, who wrote the mansion's iconic script and the lyrics for its theme song, Grim Grinning Ghosts. The Haunted Mansion finally opened its doors in Disneyland in 1969, and versions in Florida and Tokyo soon followed. One potential problem Imagineers had to overcome when designing Disneyland Paris was the language barrier. Guests would be visiting from all over Europe, making visual storytelling more crucial than ever. So, when it came to recreating the Haunted Mansion in Paris, the Imagineers had to make some pretty big changes. Now, Walt Disney's original ideas for his haunted mansions were to blend the mansions themselves into the surroundings. Like, they would look great on the outside, for example in Liberty Square, in Disneyland. But for the installation in Disneyland Paris, because it was in an area where lots of people were coming from different countries with different languages, they wanted it to be blindingly obvious that this was a haunted house. And you look at how it looks decrepit. It's been specially made to look like that, so it's it is obvious when you approach through the gates. And as for the naming, they decided to call it the Phantom Manor because that's very similar to how it's said in French, which is Le Phantom Manoir. And the name and the manor's exterior weren't the only changes made. The need for non-linguistic storytelling in Paris led to the composition of a new, darker score for the attraction. Exertencio's grinning ghosts can still be heard in the final scene, but throughout the rest of the ride, Phantom Manor's original score plays. The score was orchestrated by John Debney and recorded by the London Symphony Orchestra at the iconic Abbey Road Studios. The language barrier also led to the removal of the ghost host narrator from the attraction. However, there would still need to be narration in the foyer and the stretching room to set up this story. The original narration was recorded by Vincent Price in one of his last roles before his death, but the Imagineers ultimately opted for a French narration recorded by Gérard Chevalier. In 2019, portions of Price's original recording were remastered and added back into the attraction as part of a new bilingual narration track.
You may not believe it, but beauty once lived in this house. Phantom Manor a connu des jours heureux, mais les temps ont changé.
The thing about the Phantom Manor is it's got a much spookier feel than, say, the Haunted Mansion in Walt Disney World in Florida. And the story of the mansion is built into the story of Frontierland here in Disneyland Paris, combined with the story of Big Thunder Mountain, which we're going to go into now. The town of Thunder Mesa was founded in the 1850s after prospector Henry Ravenswood struck gold in the Big Thunder mine. Using his newfound wealth, Henry built a Victorian-style manor on the hill above the town, where he lived with his wife Martha and his daughter Melanie. Melanie grew up and became engaged to one of the miners, who promised to take her away from Thunder Mesa forever. This angered Henry, and he swore to do everything in his power to stop the wedding. However, in 1860, an earthquake struck Thunder Mesa, killing many in the town, including Henry and Martha Ravenswood. It seemed like nothing could now stand in the way of the wedding. But on the morning of the big day, the groom was nowhere to be found. Melanie wandered the manor for hours, waiting for her fiancé to arrive, but he never did. As she waited and waited, a mysterious phantom began to taunt her, inviting his friends from the underworld to inhabit the house alongside the devastated bride. Ravenswood Manor fell into disrepair. Melanie never left the house again, although the residents of the Thunder Mesa swore that they often heard sounds of a haunting lullaby and a maniacal laugh coming from the manor. The Imagineers who crafted this detailed story for the Phantom Manor were inspired by the works of European literature such as The Phantom of the Opera and Great Expectations. The Phantom Manor opened with Disneyland Paris on the 12th of April 1992. Fans of the Haunted Mansion will notice that the Phantom Manor is much darker in tone than its American counterparts. There are many familiar elements such as the stretching room, the seance room and the ballroom, but there are also many differences. Most notably, the attraction's finale takes place in Phantom Canyon, the underworld version of Thunder Mesa. Supposedly, this scene was inspired by the never-built Western River Expedition attraction designed for the Magic Kingdom. In 2018, the Phantom Manor closed for a year-long refurbishment to add even more detail to the storyline. For years, guests had speculated over the identity of the mysterious Phantom, but when the attraction reopened in 2019, there was finally a definitive answer. The Phantom had been Henry Ravenswood all along, determined to stop his daughter from leaving Thunder Mesa from beyond the grave. Changes have been made throughout the mansion. As you enter the foyer, you now see a portrait of Melanie and her father that has decayed along with the mansion. Then, when you step into the stretching room, a new set of portraits greets guests. Now the portraits show Melanie with various suitors, each of whom is revealed to meet a sticky end. In the portrait gallery on your way to the Doom Buggies, you'll notice a portrait of Henry Ravenswood. When lightning strikes the picture, he takes on the form of the Phantom, finally confirming his true identity. Finally, on the ride itself, the Phantom now joins Melanie both in the endless hallway and in the ballroom scene. So, now you know how Imagineers reimagined a Disneyland classic for the Parisian audience, I wanted to share some fun facts about the Phantom Manor. The plaque outside the manor gates has the Latin inscription Non omnis moria. When translated into English, this means not everything dies, which acts as a warning to guests about what they will find in the house. If you look closely, you'll also notice that the plaque is surrounded by serpents. Ever wondered how the Imagineers managed to make the trees around the mansion look dead? Well, that's because they are dead. Trees that were damaged during the construction on Disneyland Park were transferred to the Phantom Manor.
The Phantom Manor is the only example of Disney's haunted mansion that the guests actually enter through the front door. There's big doors here.
If you look behind you as you walk towards your Doom buggy, you'll notice that the portrait gallery that you've just walked through is actually shaped like a coffin. Walt Disney might not have lived to see the haunted mansion come to fruition, but he is part of the Phantom Manor. On the table at the end of the portrait corridor is a picture of a 1-year-old Walt Disney. In the ballroom scene, you can see a portrait on the wall showing the mansion in its former glory. As you make your way through Phantom Canyon, listen out for the mayor to your left. He is voiced by Paul Frees and recites the iconic line,
"Welcome. All our ghosts have been dying to meet you."
Many guests believe one of the busts singing Grim Grinning Ghosts is Walt Disney himself, but this just isn't true. The bust in question is actually Thurl Ravenscroft, famous for being the voice of Tony the Tiger. That's a great fact. As your Doom buggy makes its way to the exit, you pass by a crypt with 4 gravestones. Each gravestone tells the tale of how one of Melanie's suitors met his end. If you're in Frontierland after dark, head over to the Phantom Manor and you may notice Melanie staring down at you from one of the upper windows.
This area off to the side of the Phantom Manor is called Boot Hill, and it's where you'll find various fake graves that tie in with the story of the whole land. And actually here lies the owner of the mansion, Henry Ravenswood, and his wife. So that's our guide to the Phantom Manor. We hope you enjoyed this in-depth look. If you did, please subscribe to our channel, it really helps us. And thanks for watching Rom on Holiday. France is the castle capital of the world. Make sure you don't miss what's down below. Come with me. We're going to cover the icon of Disneyland Park, and that's Sleeping Beauty's castle.